You would just testify to a total of 4 transactions that were approved.
That's correct.
Okay. And when a service charge is applied, you still get the money. It's not deducted from the money that comes out of the cash machine, correct?
That's correct.
So just for the sake of clarity, if you withdraw $400, you get the $400, and the service charge is attached to your account.
That's correct.
And you would just testify to 4 successful withdrawals that were made?
That's correct.
400, 400, 160.
That's correct.
For a total of how much, sir?
That would be $960.
Thank you, Detective. Detective Blair, I had asked you some questions, and you had testified a few moments ago. In addition to the spreadsheet, you received some additional information, some photographs that were sent to you.
That's correct.
You would just testify to transactions or attempted transactions that were made at 5 different banks, correct?
Correct.
And out of those 5 banks, did you receive photographs from every bank location?
That's correct.
Everyone?
Well, everyone except Mount Washington Bank. I didn't deal with that one.
Detective Blair, with the exception of the Mount Washington Bank, I want to start with the Metro Credit Union that you had testified to, located on Massachusetts Avenue. And just showing you these 2 particular photographs, sir, do you recognize what you see there?
Yes. And these are the photos that were sent to me by Karen Skinner, the security officer for the Metro Credit Union.
And what was the date of those photographs? When were they taken?
7/23/2013 at 6:11 a.m.
Okay. And did these correspond with the transaction time on the spreadsheet that you just walked the jury through?
That's correct.
Just directing your attention to, well, let me ask you this. These 2 photographs, sir, are these fair and accurate representations of what you received on July 23rd, 2013?
They are.
May these be marked, Your Honor?
Yes.
Exhibits 25 and 26 on March 1.
Detective, I had also asked you when you walked the jury through some transactions or attempted transactions at the Bank of America located on Columbia Road in Upham's Corner.
Correct.
And do you recognize these two photographs, sir?
I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
These are the photographs that I was sent to by Donna McAdams, who's an investigator at Bank of America, and it dated 7/23/2013 and at 6:35 a.m.
And did those correspond with the spreadsheet that you received from Mr. Bennett?
That's correct.
And are these photographs fair and accurate representations of what you received on that date, July 23rd of 2013?
Yes.
May these be marked as the next numbered exhibits, Your Honor?
Yes.
Exhibits 27 and 28, so marked, Your Honor.
I had asked you a few moments ago about the Sovereign Bank as well,
Yes.
and that was located in very close proximity to the Bank of America.
It is.
I just want to show you this sequence of photos. The first three have already been marked as exhibits 18, 19, 20, and 21. And also to ask you to take a look at the last one and ask you if you recognize these particular photographs, sir.
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
These are the photographs that I received from Tom Backstrom. He was the investigator for Sovereign Bank. It was dated 7/23/2013 at 6:40 a.m.
And did those correspond to the spreadsheet you just testified to relative to that location?
That's correct.
And is this last photo, the fifth one I placed in front of you, a fair and accurate representation of what you reviewed on July 23rd, 2013?
It is.
May this photograph be marked, Your Honor?
Yes.
Exhibit 29, so marked, Your Honor.
Lastly, Detective, I want to show you this sequence of two photographs and ask you if you recognize them relative to the branch at 217 Adams Street in Fields Corner. Do you recognize those photographs, sir?
I do.
And what do you have in your hands there?
These are copies of the photographs that were emailed to me from Joe Bennett, the investigator for Citizens Bank, and they were dated 7/23/2013 at 6:47 a.m.
And did those correspond to the attempted transactions that you testified to on the spreadsheet, I believe, exhibit number 23?
That's correct.
May these be marked as the next numbered exhibits, Your Honor?
Yes.
Exhibits 30 and 31, so marked, Your Honor.
just putting on the monitor for a moment from the Metro Credit Union, exhibit number 25. Can you see that okay?
I can.
Now, relative to that particular exhibit, is there more than one camera angle depicted there?
Yes, there is.
Okay. And starting with the left, can you explain for the jury what vantage point is depicted in that particular exhibit?
This is where the exterior ATM machine would be at the branch, so you can access your funds from your vehicle. And the picture beside it is one that shows the actual area of that exterior ATM machine.
Okay. And with respect to the left-hand side of exhibit number 25, at some point in the investigation, you received confirmation of who's depicted in that exhibit?
I did.
Who was that, sir?
Amy Lord.
I object to that.
That is stricken.
And let me ask you this, with respect to the upper right-hand photograph, or the photograph on the right-hand side, what camera angle is depicted there, sir?
That is of the area where the ATM machines, the exterior ATM machine is located at the Metro Credit Union.
And in showing you exhibit number 26, same branch, the Metro Credit Union?
It is. It's the same area.
Okay. And what vehicle is depicted in exhibit number 26 here, sir?
The same vehicle that was in the picture you just previously showed.
And what part of the vehicle is captured on that particular still?
Just the rear part of it as it's leaving.
Okay. And what part of the rear of the vehicle?
The trunk area.
And is the back window captured there as well?
It is.
And is there anything that you see there directing your attention to what would be the lower left-hand portion of that back window?
I see a taillight.
On the window, not the tail light.
The window. There's some kind of reflection, but I can't make it out from here.
Okay. And just so we can be sure we're talking about the same thing, are you talking about this area right here?
Yes.
I'm going to exclude any characterization of the vehicle. Jury would disregard that as to whose vehicle it is.
And with respect to this particular exhibit, exhibit number 27 that you testified, that was taken at the Bank of America at Columbia Road. What area is captured in that particular photograph, sir?
This is the vestibule area of the Bank of America, and this is where they have their ATM located.
Okay. And do you see an individual at the ATM?
I do.
And showing you exhibit number 28, same bank, different angle. What is captured there? What's the vantage point?
This is, the camera would be right at the...
I object to this one question here, and I think the picture speaks for itself.
But you can describe the location and the time. You can repeat the location and the time without characterization.
The location is at the Bank of America vestibule area with the ATM machines located. That's on 7/23/2013, and I can't see the time from here. The time is 6:35
AM or PM?
a.m.
I just want to show you one of the 5 photos you looked at from the Sovereign Bank, also located in Upham's Corner at 585 Columbia Road. And what's the date and time of that particular photograph?
7/23/2013 at 6:40 a.m.
Are you,
Are we assuming this is a business record and the information on there we're accepting?
Go to see Council Simon. Members of the jury, Detective Blair is testifying to his receipt of certain business records from bank institutions. He doesn't have any personal knowledge about what's depicted or who's depicted in a photograph. What he's simply telling you is, what Mr. Pappas is asking about is, what do the business records indicate at particular dates and times, and that's the limit of what he's testifying to. Is that satisfactory, Mr. Better?
Yes, sir.
in the last photograph I want to show you, you had testified relative to certain entries that were made regarding the Citizens Bank located at 217 Adams Street.
That's correct.
And just showing you this particular exhibit, sir, for a moment, exhibit number 30. Again, the date and time.
The date is July 23rd, 2013, and the time is 6:47 a.m.
And again, did that correspond to the entry on the spreadsheet that you had received from Mr. Bennett?
That's correct.
Just have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
I want to ask you a follow-up, Dr. Blair. Early on in the spreadsheet, you gave an explanation as to why certain transactions were denied.
Yes.
And what was that reason?
Having a cap, most of us have a cap on our ATM card of how much money we can withdraw from a branch at each day. It doesn't matter how many branches you go to, but within a day you're only allowed a certain amount of money to withdraw from that account. And if it exceeds that amount, then the bank won't process the funds, and that would include any charges that you get for using the ATM at a different bank.
And you'd agree that earlier on in the spreadsheet there were certain charges that were certain transactions that were denied,
Right, it began with 2 completions and a denial.
and later on there was an approval.
Correct.
And how do you square that, the approval later on?
Because you have to ask to withdraw less money than the total amount that you're allowed on a daily thing. So if you're allowed $1,000 on a daily withdrawal from your bank account, anything below the $1,000 you can withdraw out of. So if it was $100 less, you'd be able to withdraw it. But anything that went over it, including the service charges you just had for your previous withdrawals, would be included in that. So it had to be under that limit, your daily limit. So you could get 60 out instead of the 100 if the 60 came under the $1,000 maximum.
Detective Blair, from the time you became involved with Citizens Bank, what time did you wind up communicating the spreadsheet information and the photographs you received with Lieutenant Harrington?
Immediately after I would get them, I'd forward them on.
Do you know approximately what time of the day that was at, if you can recall today?
About 3:30, I believe.
I don't have any further questions for the detective.
I have no questions.
Thank you.
Edwin Landry. The testimony about to give the jury and the court, and the cause now adhering to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
May I inquire, Your Honor?
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
Right.
Oh, good afternoon.
A little lost.
Okay. Could you please introduce yourself to the court and to the jury and spell your full name?
My name is Edwin Landry.
How old are you, sir?
I'm 60.
And do you work?
Yes.
What do you do for work?
I'm a photographer, and I do other odd jobs.
Okay. Where do you work? What do you mean by other odd jobs?
I maintain some properties in the Beacon Hill area of Boston.
Okay. How long have you been doing that for?
Off and on for about 20 years.
Where do you live?
Hyde Park.
How long have you lived in Hyde Park?
19.
Is the photography a hobby for you?
I make some money out of it, but I don't support myself in full.
Do you work full-time as a property manager?
Generally, yes, most weeks.
And what section of the city do you work in as a property manager, sir?
Mostly Beacon Hill.
How long have you been doing that for?
About 20 years.
Are you married?
Yes.
Do you have any kids?
Yes.
How old?
I have 5 of them between 17 and 28.
Do you have, Mr. Landry, any other hobbies or activities?
I ride a bicycle.
How often do you ride your bicycle?
6 days a week.
Okay. And how far do you ride that bike 6 days a week?
Generally 20 miles a day.
How long have you been maintaining that pace?
About 3 years ago I started. I worked up to that.
You worked up to that. And where do you ride your bike when you go out on those rides?
I ride all over Boston. Generally, I stick towards ocean destinations.
You said you live in Hyde Park?
Yes.
Whereabouts in Hyde Park do you live?
Madison Street.
Are you familiar with the Stony Brook Reservation, sir?
Yes. Yes, I ride there. When I first started riding, I rode a lot. It was close to my house.
Okay. And are there trails where you can ride your bike within the Stony Brook Reservation?
Yes.
Are they paved trails?
Yes.
Do they have unpaved trails?
Yes.
What type of bike do you ride?
I ride a street bike.
And by street bike, can you ride that bike on paved and unpaved surfaces?
Generally paved. I can do it paved, unpaved for a short distance if I'm just trying to get somewhere.
And how long have you been riding your bike, if not every day, occasionally, in the Stony Brook Reservation, sir?
For 3 years. When I started riding 3 years ago.
Okay. And that would that include the time leading up to July 23rd of 2013?
Yes.
As far as the paths go in the Stony Brook Reservation, are you familiar with them?
Yes.
Are you familiar with these streets around the main roads around the Stony Brook Reservation?
Yes.
And what are some of the streets that you're familiar with around the Stony Brook Reservation?
Well, there's Anakin Parkway, Smith Street, I think. Smith is a side street, I believe. Then there's Anakin's the main one I know.
Okay. And are you familiar with where Turtle Pond is?
Yes, I know that one. Yes.
And where is Turtle Pond in relation to Anakin?
They cross. Right outside the park, they cross.
Is that another roadway, Turtle Pond?
Yes.
So, if you talked about, what road was that, Smith?
Yes, it's a side street. I think it's Smith. It comes in and hits.
Are you familiar with where Gordon Ave is?
I've probably ridden it. I don't know it by name.
Okay. Are you familiar with Cleary Square?
Yes.
Are you familiar with River Street?
Yes.
So if you were in Cleary Square and you were going to the Stony Brook Reservation on Anakin, would you go up River Street and take a right over the commuter rail bridge?
Yes.
Okay. And once you took that right, would you have to take, at the end, a left to get onto Anakin?
Yes. Yep.
And if you followed Anakin to the four-way stop sign, would you take a right onto Turtle Pond Parkway?
Yes.
And the pond would literally be on your right-hand side?
Right.
And would that lead you ultimately to a large intersection where Washington Street, where Turtle Pond Parkway hits Washington Street?
Yes.
I want to show you a schematic, sir, in a moment. And just take a second, Mr. Landry, if you would, to orient yourself to this. Do you see a blue mark in the middle here?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you recognize that to be?
That's the pond, Turtle Pond.
Okay. And do you see the parkway? Do you see Gordon Ave here?
Yes.
Okay. And do you see what is Anakin right here, Anakin Parkway?
Yes.
Okay. And as far as paths in there, are you familiar with any of the names of the paths inside of the Stony Brook Reservation?
Yes.
What are some of the names that you're familiar with?
I know the Bold Knob Path.
Okay.
I don't know all the others.
Keep your voice up, sir.
Bold Knob Path, I know.
Okay. Have you ridden your bike on Bold Knob Path in the past?
Yes.
Is there a way to access Bold Knob Path from Anakin Parkway?
Yes.
And without referring to this for a moment, sir, disregard this board for a moment. How would you access the Stony Brook Reservation and get to Bold Knob Path from Anakin?
Well, there's two ways.
Why don't we start with the first?
There's a parking lot.
Okay, let's start with that one.
You go in, enter the parking lot. There's a paved path. You take a right up, and Bold Knob will be on the right.
Okay. And that parking lot that you described, approximately how many cars can it accommodate?
4 or 5.
Okay. Would you describe it as relatively small?
Yes.
When you first went to Stony Brook Reservation on that day, is that how you accessed the paths?
Yes.
Okay. And just generally, sir, do you see Bold Knot Path on this schematic?
Yes.
And generally, sir, as this board appears to you of the Stony Brook Reservation, is it a fair and accurate representation of that area, Bold Knot Path, and the streets around it?
Yes.
May this be marked as the next number to keep it on?
Exhibit 32 so marked, Your Honor.
Mr. Landry, can you see that okay?
Yes.
I had asked you a moment ago, and you referenced the Turtle Pond right here, correct?
Yes.
And this is the parkway that you were referring to?
Yes.
And I asked you about a four-way intersection. I'm going backwards now towards Enneking. Bold Knot, in this P right here, does this fairly depict where the small parking lot is that you described?
Yes.
And then if you go into the Stony Brook Reservation from that parking area, that's where you can access the riding paths and ultimately Bold Knot Path that you're familiar with.
Yes.
And you've been riding in there for quite some time, sir?
Yes.
Let me direct your attention to a Tuesday, July 23rd of 2013. Did you work as a property manager that day?
Yes.
You left your house at some point in the morning?
Yes.
What time did you leave to go to work that day?
Probably 7:30.
And what time did you finish work that day?
Around lunch.
Was that the end of the day for you?
Yes.
And is there a reason you finished early that day?
Yeah, it was raining heavy.
Okay. Did you get caught in the rain?
Yes.
What happened when you got caught in the rain?
I was soaked to the skin, so I decided to go home.
Okay. Did you have to make a stop before you went home?
Yes, I went back. I was working in the North End that day. I had to go back to Beacon Hill and drop off some tools.
Some what?
Tools.
Okay. And after you dropped off your tools in Beacon Hill, Mr. Landry, where did you wind up going?
Home.
And what were you going to do on that day?
Take a bike ride.
Okay. Do you recall what time you got home at?
Not exactly. Like 2-ish.
And you were living on what street?
Madison Street.
How far is that from the little parking lot you described on Enneking that leads into the Stony Brook Reservation?
About 1 mile.
What did you do once you got home, sir?
It had stopped raining, so I decided to take a ride.
And where did your ride take you on July 23rd, 2013, initially?
Initially, I went down Truman Parkway towards Mattapan. I was going to head towards the ocean. It started raining again, so I started looping back.
And where did you loop back towards, sir?
I went down 138 in Milton, came back the backside of Hyde Park.
Okay. And where did that ride take you to?
Hyde Park Ave.
And where did you go from there?
I was heading home, and it stopped raining again, so I took a ride to Stony Brook.
Okay. And how did you wind up getting to Stony Brook?
On the road.
I understand the route you took, sir,
I think
from Hyde Park.
Reservation Road, I think.
And as far as you reaching Enneking Road, when you reached Enneking Parkway, did you ultimately go through that parking lot to get onto the riding paths?
Yes.
Okay. So when you arrived there initially, did you come from the direction so that the parking lot was on your left, or from the other direction so it was on your right?
My right.
Were there any cars in the parking lot when you arrived?
At that moment, I don't remember.
Do you recall about what time this was?
3:30, 4:45.
And what did you do once you went inside to Stony Brook Reservation, sir?
I did a 2.5-mile paved loop.
And that first loop that you took, sir, inside the Stony Brook Reservation, did that take you onto Bold Knot Path?
No,
Where did it take you?
back to the parking lot.
And what did you decide to do once you got back to the parking lot?
I realized I had forgotten my water bottle. I decided to go to Cleary Square to get some water or Gatorade or something.
And what direction were you going to take Mr. Landry to get to Cleary Square?
Well, the shortest route would have been going up Anakin, but I don't like riding that because
Why is that?
there's very little shoulder and the cars go really close.
And when you're talking shoulder, you're talking about where the yellow line is on the edge of the road?
Yeah.
So what route did you decide to take to go to Cleary Square?
I went back in.
Okay. And if you go back in, were you planning on going down Bold Knot Path?
Yeah.
You just described a moment ago for the jury the entrance from the paved portion to get to Bold Knot Path.
Right.
If you follow Bold Knot Path all the way to the end, where does it take you?
Back out to Anakin Parkway.
Further down the parkway?
Right.
And closer to Gordon Ave?
Yes.
You were alone?
Yes.
Did you see anyone during your first loop inside Stony Brook Reservation, sir?
I saw one person walking around talking on the cell phone.
Okay. And was that on Bold Knot Path or near Bold Knot Path?
No.
The second time through, when you decided to go to Cleary Square, sir, when you decided to go to Cleary Square, did you go up the paved path?
I took a right up the paved path, yes.
And when you went up that paved path, did you reach Bold Knot?
Yes.
Did you take a right onto Bold Knot Path?
Yes.
And what did you do, what happened when you started going down Bold Knot Path?
I found a person.
Okay. And you say you found a person. Where was this person, Mr. Landry?
Well, I got about 100 yards down, maybe 75, and when I went around a corner, she was laying on the trail.
Okay. The person that you saw, male or female?
Female.
Did she have clothes on?
No.
How close did you get to her?
Actually, I got about 15 or 20 feet, I'd say.
Okay. And when you got to that particular point, did you see anyone else on Bold Knot Path?
No.
And did you have a cell phone with you on that day?
Yes.
Did you use your cell phone?
Yes.
And what did you use it to do?
I called 911.
Yeah, I want you to listen to this, sir.
What is the location of your emergency?
I'm at Stony Brook Reservation in High Park.
Okay.
I just came upon a body.
Do you know what street you're on, sir?
There's an entrance to the Stony Brook Reservation that's on, it's not, shit. There's like 5 or 6 parking places. It's,
Okay, is it off of like Denham Parkway or East Boundary Road?
well, one thing's up, really scenic road with the water bridge. I'm kind of, this is fucked up. I'm kind of freaked out. I'm just like, I might go the path and make it girl.
How old does she look?
I couldn't see her face, but she was young. Let's see. You know where Anakin Parkway is?
Yes, I do.
It crosses Anakin Parkway. What's the road that crosses Anakin?
Denham Parkway.
Okay, so there's a little not too far from Anakin, there's a parking place, 5 or 6 car spot.
Okay. Are you near like a field or anything?
There's a field across the street, but go to the, where the crosswalk, where the parking place is.
Okay, hold on a second.
You get somebody already coming?
Yeah, we're already on the way show. We'd be on the way show. So you're probably up East Boundary. How old does she look?
I mean, she looked like pretty colorful if she was like a line that just come with slides. I got about 30 feet away and turn around and went the other way.
What's your name, sir?
Edwin. Landry, Landry.
And your phone number, please.
617?
Yep.
818-7428.
Okay, just stay by the phone. They'll probably be calling you back for more information and a better direction. Okay, but we're on the way.
If you can get it, you can walk to where the place is.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that the call you made that day?
Yes.
And for the record, I was just referencing accessing Exhibit 1. You were on a 911 call. Did you stay in the particular area of Bold Knot Path after you made that call, or did you move?
I stayed in the parking lot.
And how long did you wait in the parking lot for?
I actually checked it later on my phone. It was 14 minutes when I came.
And when you say 14 minutes, what happened at the 14-minute mark, Mr. Landry?
An ambulance showed up.
And as far as the ambulance showing up, did you take the operator or occupants of the ambulance anywhere?
I took them up to Bold Knob.
And did you go down the path?
Part way.
Why only part way?
I didn't have to go all the way.
So Landry, I'm just going to take a minute to show you a sequence of photos. Ask you to take a look at them, okay? Generally, do you recognize what's depicted on the left-hand side of this board, sir?
Just getting oriented here. Yes,
What do you see there, sir?
that's the parking lot right there.
And is that the area of Enneking that you were testifying to where you could access the Stony Brook Reservation?
Yes.
And generally, sir, does this appear to be a fair and accurate representation of that area?
Yes.
May this be marked as the next number exhibit, Your Honor?
Exhibit 33, so marked, Your Honor.
You had described a road opposite the Stony Brook Reservation. I think you described it as Smith or Smithfield.
Something like that, yes.
And when you were talking about that road, Mr. Landry, can you see this okay?
Yes.
Were you referencing this particular road right here?
Yes.
And the parking lot that you said could accommodate 4 or 5 cars off of Enneking Parkway, is this the parking lot you were referencing in your testimony, sir?
Yes.
And when you described for the jury accessing Bold Knot Path, if you were to go into the Stony Brook Reservation in this parking lot area, you said there was a gate there?
Yes.
Bold Knot Path would be up in here somewhere to the right?
About there, yes.
Okay. You said you were going to go through there because the road was narrow.
Well, the dividing lanes, yeah. There's a lot of traffic there.
And just looking at this particular exhibit, sir, exhibit number 33, if you were to follow Bold Knot Path all the way to the end, would it dump you further out on Enneking somewhere up here, sir?
Yeah, right about there.
Okay, around the curve of the road as is depicted in the exhibit?
Somewhere in that curve, yes.
And you never made it that far?
Not that day, no.
Mr. Landry, I just want to show you another sequence of 5 photographs on this board. And I want you to start sequentially going clockwise. Go clockwise from the upper right-hand corner all the way to the top left and then to the middle. And take a look at these photographs, okay?
Okay.
Okay, take your time. Do you recognize the areas depicted in these photographs, sir?
Yes.
And what do you see there?
I see the parking lot, I see the right onto the paved path, and I see the paved path continue.
And does that paved path take you to Bold Knot Path?
Yes.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of how the area appeared back in July, on July 23rd of 2013?
Yes.
May this be marked as the next number exhibit, Your Honor.
Exhibit 34, so marked, Your Honor.
see that okay, Mr. Landry?
Yes.
Starting with the upper right-hand photograph, what area is depicted right here, sir?
That's the parking lot entrance.
And if you were to go through that parking lot entrance to get to Bold Knot Path, would you go left or right?
Right.
Okay. And bottom right photograph, is that just past the entrance accessing the paved path?
Yes.
And if you follow that path, would it take you to the bottom left photograph?
Yes.
And continuing up the path, would it take you to the top left photograph?
Yes.
And directing your attention to almost the middle of this photograph, do you see a little outcropping of rocks there?
Yes.
And directing your attention to the middle photograph, sir, do you see an enlarged view of the outcropping of rocks?
Yes.
And if you were to follow along that paved path, just a little bit past that outcropping of rocks, what is the path that's on your right-hand side?
It's the unpaved Bold Knot Path.
And I want to show you a second sequence of 5 photographs, sir. Mr. Landry, same question, and I'll ask you to take a look at them in the same order, clockwise, starting with the top right photograph, working your way around and then into the middle.
Okay.
Do you recognize the areas depicted in these 5 photographs, sir?
Yes.
And what path is depicted on here?
Bold Knot Path.
And is it a fair and accurate representation of how it appeared back on July 23rd of 2013?
Yes.
May this be marked as unarmed under the written order?
Yes.
Exhibit 35, so marked, Your Honor.
Mr. Landry, on the previously marked exhibit number 34, you had talked about the middle photograph and there was an outcropping of rocks.
Right.
And starting with the top right photograph, do you see that outcropping of rocks right here?
Yes.
And do you see in this particular photograph, it's a very thin yellow line right here?
I do.
And going to the bottom right photograph, now do you see that yellow line clearly?
Yes.
And the path that's beyond this yellow line is what, sir?
It's Bold Knot Path.
And going to the bottom left photograph, sir, where these green markers are indicated, is that a vantage point going down Bold Knot Path?
Yes.
And is that the route that you traveled on July 23rd, 2013?
Yes.
And top left photograph, sir, in the sequence of photographs, is that further down Bold Knot Path?
Yes.
And lastly, sir, directing your attention to the middle photograph, do you see this structure right here that appears to be a canopy, a blue canopy?
Yes.
Okay. As you traveled on Bold Knot Path in the area of blue canopy, of that blue canopy, what did you see on July 23rd, 2013?
Right around that corner, there was a girl laying there.
Mr. Landry, last question. What did you say the street was that you lived on again?
Madison Street.
Madison?
Yeah.
I don't have any further questions, Mr. Landry, Your Honor.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Mr. George, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Landry?
all the way to 1 o'clock or so, and then we're going to end court tomorrow with the view. So there's going to be no testimony tomorrow. All of the court activity tomorrow will be that view. It's going to be extended. We're going to be on the bus for a while. We're also all going to be walking around, and our path of travel is going to take us to some unpaved areas that you can probably figure out from the last witness. So what I'm telling you is to wear, if you want, comfortable clothes and shoes to walk in tomorrow, because we will be doing a lot of walking. Right, so you've been warned. So just dress appropriately tomorrow. We're going to start promptly. The bus should be here at 8:45. So please try to get here like you did this morning, a little bit before 9 o'clock, so we can get our business done in the morning. So with that, I'm going to wish you a good day. See you back tomorrow morning before 9 o'clock.
All right, jurors, please put your pens in your notes, notebooks. Leave them on your chair. Step down. Court's in recess.
Still in session.
Court is still in session. Please be seated.
So, Mr. Kennedy, there's a humane practice motion regarding the statements provided by a client on the 24th, as well as a phone call on May 10th.
It was the phone call that really triggered the human practice request. I guess what I was wondering is, and I was speaking to Mr. Pappas, and I haven't gotten an answer back from him yet, is whether my understanding of the humane practice rule from my use of it in the past and my observations of it is that if I present some credible evidence that there's an issue, then the burden shifts to the Commonwealth to have to prove voluntariness of it beyond a reasonable doubt. The question I have is, we put an affidavit in. I don't know if I can get Dr. Abloh here tomorrow to testify. He's put several reports in and an affidavit specifically in connection with this. I'm wondering if that would be enough for Your Honor, or whether I have to seek to get him in here, and we have to seek to get Dr. Kelly in here as well.
Right. I guess the short answer is you've raised an issue. You've attacked the state that the report is on the Abloh, but frankly, Dr. Abloh doesn't talk about the voluntariness of the statement in his report.
But there is an affidavit that we also attached to it that does, I think, more directly address that.
Oh, I can't. Forgive me, I didn't see the affidavit. I just thought you appended his report.
No, I put the affidavit in too.
Oh, I see his affidavit. Well, let me ask Mr. Pappas, when do you intend, if at all, to get the statements?
Well, if we keep up the pace that we maintain today, Your Honor, I think it would probably be around, could be as early as Wednesday or Thursday of next week, Your Honor. I don't think before that. I don't intend to go into it before that.
Do you intend to introduce the statements in your case in chief?
At this point, I do, Your Honor.
So what I would require is a hearing outside the presence of the jury on Wednesday or Thursday featuring Dr. Abloh and Dr. Kelly.
That would work better, because I just had no notice to get a hold of Dr.
No,
Kelly.
that's fine. I mean, you didn't refer to it appropriately so in your opening statement, so it's not an issue. It hasn't been vetted to the jury. I have to make a determination, a preliminary determination of voluntariness, and of course the jury will get the issue as well. But I need to hear the expert testimony before I can make a determination.
Understood, Your Honor. And you know, based on my conversations with Mr. Denner, and in terms of preparing, I'm just trying to figure out what's in play here. Is it the voluntariness of the jail call, the statement to investigators, or both?
I think the motion is about both.
It's both. And I only put that one phone call in because you indicate to me at this moment that's the phone call, when you're intending to bring in evidence. If you told me otherwise, I would have to listen again to those to decide whether I wanted to add that to the motion.
Well, to the extent there's an additional phone call, Your Honor, of course, under our continuing obligation to provide mandatory discovery, I would absolutely make Mr. Denner aware of that. At this point in time, Your Honor, based on the phone calls that we've reviewed, The only phone call that is a live issue would be the one that Your Honor listened to and the one that was introduced during the course of the competency hearing. The May 10th, the Mother's Day
The
phone call.
Mother's Day call. Okay, so I'll hear testimony from Dr. Zabwell, Kelly, and any other witnesses. They're recorded calls, so I don't really have to, have a police officer characterize them to me. Nor do I need a custodian. But I think defendant's demeanor regarding the statement of investigators, I think a police officer would have to testify as to how he got
We'd have one readily available for that.
Yeah, police officer for that. The only other issue that comes to my mind that hadn't been raised regarding the statement of the investigators on July 24th is, I assume the statement is admissible under your theory, Mr. Pappas, to show the defendant's state of mind.
Correct, Your Honor. And the court should know that in addition to the transcript that you reviewed, there was an audio and video of that interview.
Okay. A video actually would be really helpful if I could get that before Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, so I can have watched it.
We can have that for you tomorrow morning.
Actually, if I could get it for the weekend, it would be great, so I can have watched it.
Easily done.
Okay. But the other issue that pops up when I read the statement, the 104-page statement, the statement is chock full of denials and accusations. Now, I understand the denial part, which normally would be inadmissible on a defendant's, on a Commonwealth's motion, but the Commonwealth says that's an admission because it shows state of mind, correct?
Yes.
But the statement is also chock full of accusations and denials. The accusations are inadmissible.
We had actually discussed redacting it to a certain extent. That's where the court's going.
Yeah, that's where I am going. I think it would have to be redacted to a lot of extent because it's full of a paragraph long accusation and then denial, and as you both know, those are inadmissible.
And I think, given that we're not going to have a hearing on humane practice tomorrow, I would like to use at least an hour tomorrow to go through the statement with Mr. Denner, so we can work on it over the weekend, so we're not scrambling on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Those streamline everything. So you both know the legal issue. That's what came to mind. So we'll work on, and if you need me to intervene, I will. We'll work on redacting out all the accusations.
Last housekeeping matter, Your Honor. Are you going to permit counsel to do a view opening tomorrow? Brief view opening.
I'll allow you to do it. You want to do a view opening as well? I'll allow you to do a very brief view opening tomorrow.
I might not take advantage, Your Honor. I'm just asking.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of them, but if you want to do one, you can. I think the jury has the idea of the physical location.
I understand.
At this point, given that we're doing it, with 10 witnesses in mind. All right, so
Fair enough, Your Honor.
I think they know the proximity.
Okay.
But yeah, so if you could work on that humane practice, and I'll participate here on Wednesday, Thursday.
And we find, Your Honor, by the end of Tuesday, we let you know whether you went there Thursday when we get that and knock out all the other.
Sure. Whenever you can get the witnesses here, I'll hear from them, I'll give you the opportunity. We'll have. It should probably take an hour, 2 hours or so. We'll conference